Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX World. I'm Megha Sharma and let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. 31-year-old conservative activist and influential Trump ally Charlie Kirk has died after being shot at a campus event in Utah. US President Donald Trump shared a grief video calling it a dark moment for America. A manhunt is still underway with the FBI urging the public to share photographs and videos of the shooting. The detained South Korean workers have been released and are now on their way to the Atlanta airport to board the chartered flight that was brought in to repatriate them. The US president is said to have refused to release them earlier, asking them to train the Americans, delaying their repatriation. Meanwhile, the South Korean president Lee Jae-myung has said that the country will be hesitant about investing in America following a massive immigration raid at a Hyundai plant in the state of Georgia last week. The former Chief Justice of Nepal, Sushila Karki, has met with the army chief amid speculation that she will be picked as the interim Prime Minister of Nepal. Talks between the army and the Gen Z protesters will resume today. Curfew in violence-hit regions, including the capital Kathmandu, has been extended till Friday morning. US President Donald Trump held a heated call with his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu, conveying deep frustration at being blindsided by Israel's strike on Hamas representatives in Qatar, even as Israel faces global condemnation for its military strikes. At least 35 people have been killed after Israel carried out airstrikes in Yemeni capital Sanaa. A day after targeting Hamas leaders in Doha, a number of sites were targeted, including medical and fuel stations. The Houthis said that they used missiles against the Israeli strikes. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky slammed Western and global leaders for what he called lack of action over Russia's intrusion of Polish airspace with drones. At least 3 drones were shot down by the Polish and other 2 aircraft in Poland's airspace by NATO during yesterday's attack on Ukraine. France's new Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu's first day in office was marked by widespread street protests against President Emmanuel Macron, with demonstrators clashing with the police. The deployment of 80,000 police officers broke barricades and dragged hundreds of protesters into custody, even as flashpoints multiplied. A Brazilian judge has returned the first non-guilty vote in the coup-plotting trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro, shifting all eyes on the last 2 of his colleagues left to vote following 2 findings. The former president of Brazil faces accusations that he attempted to illegally hang on to power after his 2022 electoral defeat to the current president Lula da Silva. The big story that we're tracking for you is the death of Charlie Kirk. He was a conservative activist and a prominent ally of US President Donald Trump. The founder of Turning Point US was shot dead yesterday while speaking at the Utah Valley University. He was hit once in the neck while addressing a crowd of 3,000 students. FBI Director Kash Patel has confirmed that the person detained earlier in connection with the fatal shooting of political activist Charlie Kirk has been released following an interrogation. Kirk was speaking as part of his American comeback tour. He was shot during the campus event. There had been 2 detentions that were made. The 2 suspects since then have been released after interrogation by the police. There is a manhunt that has been on since the shooting took place, and authorities are promising to provide updates as the investigation continues. Ross Feingold is on the telecast with me. Ross, shocking development coming in from Utah in America. Again, the big question arises, who may be behind this gruesome attack that has led to the death of a close ally of Donald Trump, even as there are speculations rife in wake of the big allegations being made by the Trump administration and Trump himself calling it a political act by quote-unquote leftist radicals.
Certainly remains to be seen who was behind this, or what this individual's motivations were. It's easy to assume that they didn't like Kirk's politics, they didn't like his style of politics or his rhetoric, and that prompted them to take this horrible action. Unfortunately, violence and assassinations on both sides of the American political divide do occur. It's occurred historically, and it's occurred with greater frequency in recent years, and that's terribly unfortunate. We do see it on both sides. But President Trump's words are his view on these events, and it's understandable, frankly, that he would blame leftists because that President Trump is on a different side of the political divide, and Charlie Kirk was on his side of the political divide. So there's going to be politicization of this assassination, and that's unavoidable. There are going to be a lot of people who say this is a time to come together and things like that. But the reality is that this is just going to further the political divide in the United States.
Stay on with me. We're getting more updates now. Hours after Charlie Kirk, who's a right-wing activist, was shot dead, videos have emerged showing an individual running on a rooftop near the screen. In fact, can we put out those visuals of the rooftop from where it is suspected that Charlie Kirk was shot dead? And witnesses claim that the person was dressed in all black, and authorities say Kirk was shot from about 200 yards, likely from a rooftop. Those are visuals on your screens where the suspect, the shooter, the assassin has been encircled. And as per the authorities, there was a distance of about 200 yards from where the assassin took shot at Charlie Kirk. I'm also being joined by Mark Sutherland. Mark, what is your analysis? What do you infer from this attack that has taken place? I cannot but go back to the and recount that assassination plot against Donald Trump during his election campaign, and there are a lot of similarities in the fact that there was another suspect, the assassin, who was on the rooftop, and he had also attacked Donald Trump. Thankfully, Trump was saved and the bullet just brushed his ear.
Good to be with you. This is an extremely sad day. What we have to remember about Charlie Kirk is that he believed in dialogue, and he believed in the dialogue with people that did not agree with his opinion. And that is what is really, really sad, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage to do that in the way that he has done. I think we have to remember that sadly he is left his wife with 2 young children. We can get, I understand it, into the weeds where we look at a shot was taken from 200 yards over 600 feet. If you're doing that kind of thing, and does that point to the fact that you are an extremely professional person in how you handle that rifle? But what we have to hold in context is that sadly, is that people then have forgotten how to then dialogue. And when we see people putting some awful tweets, awful comments online, it seems as though they're sort of smiling and celebrating this kind of incident. We are really, really in a bad place as a society. Mm-hmm. Charlie would speak and would hold court in many university areas, yeah, challenging the thinking. So there is lots of events, lots of investigation to find out what's happened, as you pointed to, people running across roofs, etc., etc. Someone was arrested, they've then been released. So these events are going to unfold, and at the moment, there's not a lot of, as Ross has said, there's not a lot we can say in what's going on behind the scenes.
Right, absolutely. Ross and Mark, please stay on with me. In fact, let's listen in to the officials who made those very public statements. In fact, there were conflicting statements coming in from these officials, and let's listen in. Also conflicting because there was all complete chaos. The police at this point of time are still clueless about who these suspects are. Who was the assassin behind that brutal attack? Listen in to those officials.
I've been in touch with President Trump, with FBI Director Kash Patel. We are completely aligned with our state and federal partners as we work through this case. Now, this is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination.
In fact, supporters of Charlie Kirk described chaos and panic during the fatal shooting that happened at this university. Let's listen into those first-hand eyewitness accounts of the students that were gathered for this massive event.
Suddenly, it sounds like lightning. It was so loud. I thought the shooter was right there in the crowd, and apparently he wasn't. Apparently he was far off. And I hear this loud sound, and I'm like, "That wasn't what I thought it was, is it?" I was like, "No, this can't be happening right now." And we all ducked. Everybody got down, and I instantly just started praying for Charlie Kirk. And the girl I was next to, she was bawling because she had seen it. She had seen the graphic imagery of the bullet piercing his neck and opening his neck up, and I can't imagine what it was like to see that.
I mean, the first things of the Constitution is freedom for life, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and both of those were taken from Charlie today. I mean, he was out there expressing his views, his values, what he thought was most important, and having a debate about it, trying to get people to talk to him about it and have a free and open conversation. That's all it was. And then somebody didn't like what he said and took his life because of it, for what you believed in, for what you were saying. And that just shouldn't happen within the United States, and particularly shouldn't happen within a conservative state like Utah.
I do not expect that from Americans. This is a country where freedom was founded, where people could come from every nation to be able to be free. And we now have a president who is working to bring back all our freedoms. And that small percentage, that small, loud percentage who wants to create so much chaos and fight, you can take away his life. You will not stop the movement, because God is in charge, and freedom and truth will prevail in this nation.
This kind of brutality reminds me the harshness and the lawlessness I have seen under communism in China. And I hope our country doesn't become another China. And that's why I believe conservatives must stand up against this injustice.
So basically, I heard a loud bang, which I figured a shot would be a little bit louder, but I just saw it hit him in the chest, and then all of a sudden just tons of blood gushing right out where his heart is, and then he fell over and slumped down, and everybody got down and was screaming, and then we all ran.
You heard the one shot. Were there multiple shots or?
Just one shot straight into Charlie Kirk, and that was it. And I think they got him.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has promised to track down every single one involved in the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. And he's blamed the radical left political violence for this attack, for harming innocent people, citing attempts on himself and the attacks on the ICE agents. I'm going to bring in Ross back into the conversation. Ross, that's exactly what I'm trying to emphasize over here, that the blame has squarely been put on these quote-unquote radical left individuals. Who is Trump referring to here?
States, there are people who dislike Trump. Nearly half the electorate didn't vote for him, and among that group, there's going to be people who are very radical, and some are even prompted to using violence. Again, political violence is not something unheard of in the United States, even though as Americans, we like to think of it as rare. We like to think of it that occurs far away from the United States in countries with less developed democracies, for example. But the reality is that it does occur. And when the perpetrator is arrested, and they will be arrested, the chances of them getting away with this are very remote. If you think about high-profile crimes in the United States, especially in more recent years, suspects are usually arrested very quickly. They don't go on the run for years and years like more famous cases from decades ago, such as the Unabomber, who was on the run for such a long period of time. But in the more recent past, suspects are arrested quickly for a variety of reasons. They leave an online footprint. There's cameras that record the movements of vehicles. So it makes it more likely that the person will be caught soon. And anyone who was an accessory will be charged as well. If there are other people involved in the planning, in acquiring the weapon, for example, they're going to be charged as well. And if those people have a history of online statements criticizing President Trump, and if they could be described as left-wing radicals, then President Trump will be proven accurate.
Yeah, okay. Just over a year after the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, his close aide has been fatally shot. What does this imply? How do we understand this political assassination plots that have become far too frequent in United States of America? Mark, you also heard the eyewitness accounts. People were clearly scarred, and those who were really close, standing next to the leader, next to Charlie Kirk, have described it in very graphic detail how there was a single shot that was hit on his neck and there was blood that was splotting. And that imagery is just, just scars you. It's just embedded in your mind. Again, how safe are these public events that political leaders take part in? And do you think that there is going to be an impact and perhaps a fear that may have engulfed political leaders in holding these public rallies and events in the future?
You're absolutely right when you point out in regard to that footage, it's awful. I, on a personal level, that's the first thing I saw, and you were just then you're making calls to then confirm that. Sadly, that is what has happened beyond measure. That has gone viral. You make an extremely important point. When these kind of events happen, then the worry is that can we continue to hold events that we should be able to hold? If anyone then goes to this kind of level of violence, then it means that they are very, to me personally, at times are very, very unsure in what they have to say. If you are not able to dialogue, if this is what you then go to, and as Ross has pointed out, and you have that, yes, America has a history of sadly taking individuals out, whether you go back to Abraham Lincoln or McKinley, etc. This on a personal level, it mustn't stop people being able to dialogue and have open air dialogue in this particular way. It was what Charlie Kirk did extremely, extremely well, especially when he would have those sessions of, ask me anything. It's something that he was extremely good at, because within what we define as the culture war is happening amongst the youth. You are then having to engage with that and ask them to look at all the facts and then come along and dialogue peacefully. But going back to your question, that is always a concern. And in many ways, whoever has conducted this absolutely appalling act, then the consequences of that would be, well, maybe this is what people have to think about. In the constitutional Republic of America with the inalienable rights, being able to have free speech is fundamental to it as a society, as it should be anywhere within other countries, say like the UK, classes itself as a democracy, free speech is paramount. But when you then start to meet the other side that doesn't believe in that and then seems to take this kind of action, of course, it's a problem. And recently, since Trump's first administration, you've had all the BLM, you've had Antifa on the street as individual friends of mine, then being on the other side trying to express their opinion. When you are dealing with people who seem to think it's perfectly acceptable to wear masks, etc., and actually bully and threaten you in regard to exercising your constitutional right of free speech, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
I hope that it doesn't shut down that dialogue.
Right. Ross Feingold and Mark Sutherland, thank you very much for joining me. We'll keep a close eye on all these fast-paced developments that are taking place right now in Utah. Manhunt still underway. There have been no conclusive information that has been shared by the FBI, by the police officials about who this assassin is. I'm going to shift my focus to the other big news. Nepal's army will be resuming talks with the Gen Z protesters to decide the new interim leader for the Himalayan nation after angry demonstrations that killed at least 30 people and forced the Prime Minister of the country to resign. Soldiers continue to patrol the quiet streets of Kathmandu, the capital, and the neighboring regions that were struck by violence in the last 3 days. And its worst protests that were witnessed in many years that were triggered by a social media ban and big allegations of corruption amongst the elite and political leaders. We're also getting to know that the Army Chief of Nepal has now met the former Chief Justice of India, who is being tipped as the person who is going to be appointed as the interim Prime Minister of Nepal to lead the nation in these uncertain times. Meanwhile, the curfew in Nepal, in 3 regions particularly, that is Kathmandu and 2 other areas adjoining Kathmandu, have been put on curfew, extended curfew. There was, of course, lifting of curfews to allow for essential services to resume for just a few hours, but the curfew has been put back on and it is going to continue up until Friday morning 6 a.m. while the army and the police monitor the situation and then find it fit as to when the curfew can be lifted. Listen in to some protesters who are speaking to the media.
I was injured while I was protesting on September 8, but I came back again on September 9. And what I witnessed and what I wanted was the freedom of Nepali youths. The voices of Nepal was suppressed, and people were, taken. The government was suppressing us, with the social media ban and with all the corruption going around, and we didn't have any opportunity for the employment.
Corrupt politicians must be thrashed out from this parliament, and new generation, new leader should be implemented here. Though the leader must have good vision, can satisfy our generation and everyone. So this fight is for against corruption. So we are not going to see any corruption in coming days. That's why
we just don't want old leaders, but the leaders that are doing good should, and that had not involved in corruption should, are okay. But the old leaders and old parties should not get involved. These are the things that I want. And similarly, what I will be doing right now is currently, like, I'm just pursuing my degree, and I'm just uplifting my skills. And currently, I will support our nation for what I can do and for what I can bring with my IT knowledge and all.
अब हामीले हाम्रो देश बनाउनु छ भने हाम्रोलाई भन्दा पनि राम्रोलाई रोज्नु पर्यो, राम्रो र सोच राम्रो होस्, भिजन राम्रो होस्, उसले आफ्नो बारेमा नसोच्नुलाई हामीले अब भविष्य सुन्किनु पर्यो देशको।
अस्तिसम्म चाहिँ के सोच्थेँ भने म बाहिर गएर के गर्छु, यहाँ केही फ्युचरै छैन, म अब +2 भर्खर क्लियर गरेको, म बाहिर गएर के गर्छु भन्ने सोच्थेँ मेरो। तर अब मेरो सोच पुरै बदलियो। अब मेरो सोच यहाँ नेपाल बनाउने हो। म नेपालमा के गर्छु र के गरेर यहाँ नेपाल बनाउँछु, नेपालमै बस्छु, मेरो भविष्य त्यही छ।
Rupinder Sachdev is on the telecast. Rupinder, you know, the voices of the youth speak in unison that they were struggling in their own country to earn a livelihood while the elite were enjoying a very lavish, pompous lifestyle. These people have now come out on the streets. They are speaking to the media, and they are saying that they want a leader who's going to work selflessly for the country's development and welfare of its citizens, who's not going to be self-centered. In fact, there are at this point of time hopes being expressed by these youths, saying that their intention was to travel abroad to earn their living because of lack of opportunities back home. But now they have a mindset change after KP Oli has been ousted from the position of the Prime Minister. Do you think there is a hope for Nepal to be transformed, and how many years is that going to take?
Thank you, Megha. Always a pleasure to be with you. I would say there certainly is hope. You know, hope springs eternal in the human breast. Now, that said, the situation on the ground is definitely very surprising. Let's put it that way. And it also goes to show, you know, the subterranean sentiments which are there amongst the people, let's say the people of Nepal, were not known or maybe understood by the government of Nepal, which is there. It's like, you know, a pressure cooker was building up, and then suddenly the pressure cooker has burst. So there does seem to be huge angst, frustration, disappointment, anger at a bunch of things thrown together, as you highlighted very well. The issue being corruption, yes, and that is unfortunately a fact. We have seen it, we've seen it personally. You know, many of the elite of countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, you know, they have expensive apartments and investments in the West, be it Dubai, London, New York, penthouses and all. And I think in today's day and age, when information is much more fluid and easily available, the people of Nepal are realizing that, okay, our elite are there, they are corrupt, it seems. That's why this terminology has also come out, you know, Nepo kids, that is, nepotism is rampant in Nepal. On the other hand, unemployment, I think, was running at around 22%. And as also, I must congratulate your reports, as you're highlighting each one of those folks that you spoke with, they were saying that they felt or they feel that they have no future in Nepal. Another reason or another aspect is that, you know, in Nepal, the two big parties are in a strange way bedfellows in the in ruling the country, right? So the opposition which is there is smaller parties, fragmented, etc. The big two which are there have made a grand bargain together. So there is no alternative also, politically speaking, it seems.
Right.
Now, that said, yeah, we have to see how the transition happens with this ex-Chief Justice. Apparently, she's a respected person in the country and the army. But will this transition be smooth, let's say? Maybe that's an incorrect word, but will it proceed while violence is also happening? Or the bottom line is that
will this bring about the much needed impact and change that the people of Nepal, the youth of Nepal at this point in time are sincerely hoping? Thank you, Rupinder Sachdev, for joining me and sharing your views. I'm going to shift my focus to the other big development. The Israeli strikes over Sanaa and al-Jawf provinces of Yemen have led to the death of 35 people, and there are more than 130 people that are injured. The Israeli military stated that the strikes were carried out in response to the attacks led by the Houthis, during which unmanned aerial vehicles and surface-to-surface missiles were launched towards the Israeli territory, and Israeli airports were also targeted. After the attacks on Sanaa, the Israeli army reported intercepting missiles fired from Yemen. This attack is the latest in addition to the series of strikes and counter-strikes between Israel and Houthis as part of the Gaza war spill over. Earlier, Israel had attacked the Yemeni capital last month, targeting a senior Houthi leader. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a statement where he informed the people about Israel's strike on Houthi facilities, bases and other sites. Listen into what he said.
לפני ימים אחדים חיסלנו את רוב חברי ממשלת הטרור של החות'ים. בתגובה החות'ים ירו לפני יומיים על שדה תעופה רמון. זה לא ריפא את ידינו. אנחנו הכינו בהם היום, מן האוויר שוב, במתקני הטרור שלהם, בבסיסי טרור, עם הרבה מאוד טרוריסטים וגם עם מתקנים אחרים. אנחנו נמשיך ונכה. כל מי שמכה בנו, כל מי שתוקף אותנו, אנחנו נגיע אליו.
Ali Mohammed Abush Bak on the telecast with me. Ali Mohammed, again, strikes on two nations in a span of 24 hours is what has happened. There have been 35 deaths that have been reported in Yemen on strikes that Israeli justifies as a counterattack after the Houthis struck a number of areas in Israel, including the airports in Israel. Now, there has been a spillover clearly, the war against Hamas in Gaza has spilled over first to Hezbollah in Lebanon, then to Qatar where the strike happened the day before yesterday, and now Houthis have once again been struck. Do you think the peace process is going to face a severe setback because of these latest developments?
Thank you, Omega, for having me. It's worth mentioning that this is an Israeli airstrike number 17 since Israel started targeting Yemen in July 2024 after the supporting Gaza. Also, Houthi, it's one of the partner and one of the a significant affiliation in the resistance axis that is Iran backed this militia in the Middle East, and they have a term about unification of the arena. So that all of these they are in one union and they are supporting each other, like what happened with Gaza and Houthi Yemeni. They are supporting the civilians in Gaza. So these things make it the situation on the ground, especially in Middle East, volatile, and the situation it's increased incredibly. So it's like a snowball. So that's make it the situation more incredible. Also, most of the Israeli targeting in Yemen, it's about medical facilities and fuel storage and etc. things, and also the power station, etc. So that's making the situation more incredible. Yemen Houthi since 2016 up to date, they are in conflict. One time with Saudi Arabia, and after that America joined in this conflict to diminish the ability and the militant ability for Houthi, and also now with Israel. But it seems that Houthi Yemeni still has a power, it still exists on the ground. Most of the casualties from civilians, and according to news report, most of the Israelis targeting a civilians infrastructure, and the ability of Houthi is still growing. And we have seen and witnessed last time when the air drone that from Yemen launched toward Israel. Right. Also, it's creating the situation more difficult to reach or to reach for peace and for at least a truce or a ceasefire in the region. Since Israel is still targeting here and there in Middle East, that will make the Middle East burning again and in the brink of explosion at any time. As I mentioned, also it's not only the targeting. The day before yesterday, it was not only in Qatar and Yemen. Also, Israeli airstrike carried out a campaign in Syria, in Iraq. And there is a claim, and there is claims about the flotilla Samud in Tunisia. Yeah. So that's make it Israel. It's Benjamin Netanyahu. He want to involve Israel with a comprehensive and war or conflict in the area. That's only Israeli community understand this for his purpose, for his own purpose, and for his personal purpose. Israel has no aims in Yemen, especially, okay, there is Israel, this is a retaliation, but Israel has no intelligence service in Yemen, has no information about Houthi. As I mentioned, since 2016 up to date, Houthi Yemeni under attack, and they are fighting, but its power, it's still not diminished, and they have a still power, and their power is not degraded.
Okay, all right. Ali Mohammed Abushbak, thank you very much for joining me and sharing your views on this developing story. On that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching NewsX World.